Thank you, Amit. What a great start. Very high ground start with Pankaj giving us a very good synopsis of the global perspective vis-a-vis India and India vis-a-vis global. So, Amit, thank you for organizing this event. Whenever we think of ideas, that's what is the biggest locomotive for individuals, for organizations, for the country, and for the whole world. But whenever we think of ideas, sometimes I really wonder whether all ideas are good ideas, whether all ideas are meant for a good purpose or an intent. Because these days, in the current context, when we look around, some of the ideas that many people feel are not necessarily building the future for India, but sometimes even damaging. And this is a selective perception, but the great part is that if there are ideas that can salvage India and that can create a good future for India, is what we are talking today. And we are all going to have the common essence of those things, those ideas which can take India forward into the future, and that's what I feel we owe it to the next generation. So I'm a die-hard optimist, ladies and gentlemen, and I must mention that I'm highly inspired by the brokers of Gurgaon, by the real estate brokers of Gurgaon. Actually, I hate those spam SMSs which come on the mobile, but every day these days it is only increasing. More and more controls are coming from government, and the more controls they come, the more loopholes they find to send those spam messages. But what impressed me the most was one broker whom I have begun to call as an economist broker, who has been sending me these messages for many years. In 2009, I got this message which said that economy on a rise, rates only going upwards. He's a real estate guy, huh? Rates only going upwards. Best time to invest. Pre-launch offer. High appreciation and buy now. And then he gives his number, etc., etc. And I said, oh, okay, everybody is looking at that. It must be a great investment. Oh, years went by, and last year I received this very interesting message from him. And it said, economy is slowing, high inflation, rates only going upwards, best time to invest in real estate, pre-launch offer, rates revising soon, call now. And today morning, when I was driving to this hotel, I received another interesting SMS from him. And it said, recession now. He's an economist broker, as I mentioned. Recession now, he declares. Rupee at record low. It says high demand from NRI. And it says rates can't be lower. Best time to invest. Pre-launch offer, limited inventory, call now. In other words, whatever is the situation, this man has been coming out with great ideas to make everybody look at even the bad situation as good situations. Interesting, isn't it? So a few points that, ladies and gentlemen, since we are running short of time and Amit has to quickly cover up the lost time, so I will just make 3-4 important points that I feel is my observation at macro level and a little bit about what's going on in India. The first important thing that I wanted to share, a little bit coming out of what I heard even Pankaj mention, is that unfortunately we haven't liberated enough. Still, we are a caged tiger, or if sometimes people call it as a chained elephant. And this needs a very new mindset. It's a question of mindset and the priority. What is the priority and what is the mindset? So now something that I feel will come with the new generation. So the new India will have to be made and created by new generation. And I feel because they are the ones who will see the sense of urgency, and they're the ones who have a different perspective of looking at things. So although we say that we are a country of youth, which is predominantly youth, 54% Indians under age of 25, etc., and therefore the demographics of India indicates and suggests that in all important decision making, we have to begin to think of ideas to incorporate those mindsets. So now, which is the most important part in this whole change? So the most important part to my mind is the elected representatives. Nothing in India seems to move or will move unless the governance gets stronger. So we're talking about elected representatives. Many of them are great leaders. Many of them are some people whom corporate world, rest of the people, even around the world, idolize. But that's not what is actually representative of the majority. We still have a lot of old people. And we're talking about almost more than 60% or more than two-thirds of India about 40 years age or so. It therefore becomes very, very important that even in those elected bodies like parliaments or legislative assemblies, etc., more and more younger people get in. And therefore, it is always this hope and this request from the political parties that representation is provided to them. Now we are talking about reservations in different places like education, jobs, in government jobs, etc., but we are not looking at reservation within political parties for younger people. This becomes very, very important. And I think we will then be able to see an optimist category of youngsters who are going to look at building destiny in India in future and not merely just pension seekers. Now, last week development also showed us that while we have a fragmented politics in the country, we are also able to create consensus. There was reasonably good consensus on food bill. There was a reasonably good consensus on the land acquisition bill. And in a span of about 10 days or so, we could see things move in that direction. Now, it's debatable whether that is the priority thing and the right thing, etc. I have nobody to comment on this, but my point here is there are many other things that need equally important and equally urgent action. When we are talking about GST, for example, or we are talking about reforms in several areas in the country, in the way government is functioning, departments are functioning, and ministries are functioning, and everybody talks about it, including the present government and including the opposition, that all of these things are necessary. However, the consensus doesn't happen. And therefore, the other important point that I thought is very, very vital is how do we influence the leadership, elected leadership? If we are not able to influence that, then we continue to feel a little bit cynicism, or we continue to feel a little bit helpless. And therefore, how do we create that? Now, whether it is in the corporate world or whether it is in the educational, academic area, there is no doubt that more and more training and more knowledge sharing is something that has helped everybody to get influenced. And therefore, I'm a very strong advocator that if we are talking about a younger mindset in the elected bodies, and if we are talking about that new generation to take us forward, it is also vital that we, as a country, create academies and create platforms where there is a constant infusion of knowledge, best practices, and some bit of influence onto that category, which is a very important future leaders for the country. That I feel sometimes jokingly I comment that one of the most important corporate social responsibility of the industry is to ensure that we do provide that kind of input to those people who matter. The other important thing that I feel is vital and one of the priority areas for us to focus as a country for India is that while we need growth in job creation, there is no doubt that we cannot leave that work only to the government or to the large corporate houses. If we are talking about continuous, sustainable, and widely spread job creation platforms, it's important for us to begin to look at millions of entrepreneurs. And therefore, if entrepreneurship has to be brought into our DNA and is the future area and avenues in which we have to expect India to grow further, it is vital that we begin to create that culture even from our young children and from the schools. So I'm a very strong advocate that this is something that majority of the Indians are very, very afraid of. This is an area where most of the people or most of the youngsters sometimes begin to feel about taking into more secure jobs, etc. And therefore, if we have to create that culture right from the schools, whether we create entrepreneurship clubs, or whether we are talking about even the graduation programs in entrepreneurship, or almost every platform, almost every avenues where entrepreneurship is an area, is a virtue that can create and can revolutionize India. We have got 635,000 villages in India, and I feel that actually we should even create a momentum around expecting that every single year, almost 635,000 good practices, one each in every village, should be highlighted. There could even be a Bharat Ratna or some great award for these rural entrepreneurs. And that is one area which can begin to create an engine for our future growth. So therefore, industry bodies like FICCI or CII or SOCHM, etc., can also help in creating this so-called rural entrepreneurship. Use of technology. I'm a technology person. I represent a technology company. And I feel that if there is one thing that can do wonders in India, it is the use of this technology to create a lot more options of services. And all of this is possible as we begin to create more and more entrepreneurs in the country. The last point, ladies and gentlemen, that I want to share is that we have stayed poor for far too long. And I think as we have stayed poor for far too long, I mean as a country, one of the victims of this has been the values. The value that Indians stood for 50 years ago, 60 years ago, are the values that sometimes many new generation Indians begin to feel as liabilities. I'm referring to things like ethics, honesty, respect for people, even respect for women, collaborations, areas of coexistence, tolerance, team working, all of these areas which are an important element, an important aspect for future workforce are the areas that are becoming weaker and weaker amongst the youngsters. And therefore it becomes very important that we incorporate all of these with more sense of urgency, whether it is in the school curriculum or whether even I talked about rural India, even at the level of panchayats for a mass awareness, and consider this and make this as an example of recognition. And this is particularly important because tomorrow's business world, or tomorrow's economic world, and tomorrow's India, and hopefully wealthy India, would need a lot more of those values very, very importantly, including even the global cultural orientation. Some of these things are important for us to prepare our younger workforce, ladies and gentlemen, else we will end up into a country which we can, with all these efforts, make it as a wealthy country in several decades in future, but where Indians might end up committing 7 deadly sins, as Mahatma Gandhi once said, and making us as a characterless India. So that would be the very dangerous thing to do, particularly when India still continues to be a poor country. So with those few points, ladies and gentlemen, I look forward listening to many of you, and I think there are going to be multiple newer ideas, newer perspectives, and all of them put together, I think will make all of us a much better place.